Epiphania is the word for epiphany in Latin and Greek. We celebrate Epiphany. What does this mean? Epiphany is normally celebrated on the 12th day of Christmas, right? We know the song. Like, where does that come from? It's from the church. See, we celebrate 8 days of Christmas, and the octave day is Mary, Mother of God. And then we now transferred, like the Ascension, the Epiphany to the Sunday after Holy Family Sunday, when it normally was celebrated 3 more days from now. And last year, I believe it fell on the 12th day of Christmas. Today is actually the feast of the holy name of Jesus, and we celebrate that holy name today, Epiphania, which means to reveal, could mean to appear. Appear. What has appeared? This star has appeared. These wise men have appeared. And they have appeared because something magnificent has happened in Bethlehem. Jesus Christ is born. So these wise men set out, probably from Persia. Are they wise men? Yes, they are scholars. Are they astrologers? Probably. Are they astronomers? Yes, they are stargazers. Are they kings? We don't know. We assume from their gifts that maybe they are kings. Are there 3 or more? We assume that there's at least 3 because there's 3 gifts. And Matthew gives us the most information about them, which is not a lot. But they see this star rise, and they follow it. And we hear this prophecy before Jesus Christ was ever born in the book of the prophet Isaiah. These camels carrying all these things, gold and incense, come to Jerusalem, and all nations will gather there. And you're like, what? At that time, the people of Jerusalem that survived were in slavery in Babylon. You're like, Isaiah, you're out of your mind. The Babylonians laid waste to Jerusalem, but there's this prophecy nonetheless. And even before that, David writes this psalm that we hear from today, Psalm 72. It says, all nations will gather to Jerusalem. And it's assuming that he's speaking about his son Solomon, that he's prophesying about his son Solomon. But how much more so would he be prophesying about the Davidic king, Jesus Christ? We know that Solomon did well at the beginning, but he fell short at the end. He had all these wives, and then he kind of went over to pagan worship. And then we look at the Davidic line all the way to the Babylonian exile, and it just seemed to be going downhill, 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 till it disappears. Then this Christ child is born, and we have all these prophecies, but this Christ child is born, and they link him to David through his foster father Joseph. So these magi set out, and they follow the star from the east to the west, and they stop in Jerusalem because Jerusalem's a major hub, and it's not far at all from Bethlehem. And they go to see the king there, Herod, who is only got a little bit of Jewish in him. He's Edomite. He's a man with an agenda. He's a man that wants to hold his power. He's cruel. He's a very good builder. And if you go to the Holy Land, you can see some of the things that he built are still in existence. And he was elected by the Senate of Rome in, probably 40 BC, and then seated on his throne in probably 37 BC. So he's reigning, thinks he's all-powerful, maybe even godlike. And these kings arrive, these magi arrive, and they go to him seeking information. Hey, we saw this star. These kings are pagans. They represent all of the nations coming to Jesus. Not only people that are ethnically connected to him, but all nations. They come to him. They come to Herod. And they say, hey, we see the sign. And in the pagan tradition, a new star could be a symbol of a birth of a god. But we know there's more to it. So where is this king, this God king, to be born? And Herod, he goes, oh, let me go get my experts, the chief priests and the scribes. And they come out there with the scrolls. Where is this Messiah, the Christ, to be born? Like, well, this they've been waiting for this for a long time. A long time. Now there's a sign. And they unroll the scroll and say, oh, here in Micah, it says in Bethlehem, right down the street. And so Herod, being the liar that he is, says, oh, go find this new king so I can pay homage to him too. Well, that's not what he wants. See, he must know about some of the prophecy in the books associated with Moses, Numbers. See, Balaam talks about this king and how Edom, Herod is an Edomite, how Edom would be put down. So maybe Herod is thinking about this. Go find him and then bring word to me where he is. They don't know, the kings don't know, so they set out. They follow the star, not far from Jerusalem, to Bethlehem. And it says that Mary and the child are in a house, so maybe it was sometime after the birth, and they had found suitable lodging. They enter, and they bow to the ground, prostrating themselves before the infant king. And they open their treasuries of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, very expensive gifts. And each symbolizes something about Jesus. The gold, because he is the King of Kings, but he's not a king like Herod. The frankincense, which is an expensive incense, which was kept burning before the altar of the Holy of Holies, night and day, symbolizing divinity, prayers rising up to heaven. And myrrh, which was used to anoint a Levitical priest, was also used to anoint at death, very expensive oil mixed with this myrrh. They give him that. Mary pondered all these things in her heart. Why didn't those scholars and chief priests go? Here they are in the scrolls looking, oh, this is happening right now. It's right over here in Bethlehem. Why didn't they go when these guys, the pagans, went? Why didn't Herod go? Well, we know Herod had an agenda. He feared for his kingship, even though this king was not a threat to him. Wanted to hold on to it at any cost. Remember after this about the slaughter of the innocents? And then later, he's sitting up there and they're saying, hey, you're sitting there like a god. You give orders like you have everyone at your command, and he falls over dead. They go. The chief priests and the scribes don't go. Why don't they go? Can you imagine studying this your whole life, and then it's coming to pass and you don't go? Well, having gone through the seminary system and being in the priesthood now for 14 and a half years, you see things. I knew priests that they could read scripture in Greek and they know all the meanings of the word. But when adoration time came around, they weren't around. Is it merely an intellectual connection? You see priests get up and preach on Sunday, and then we find out later they have different lives. And then there's the laity. Years ago, in this very community, I knew a woman who was very, very prayerful. She knew all kinds of information and teaching about church and tradition. And I see now on Facebook she's pro-abortion and away from the church. Why don't they go? Is it indifference? Is it indifference? We have one man, Herod, who has an agenda. Jesus does not fit into his agenda. It could be that. I've got an agenda. I've got certain things I want to happen in civil life. And the church doesn't agree with my thinking. They say what I believe and what I want to happen civilly is actually immoral. Could be an agenda. It could be indifference. Well, I like to study about Jesus. I like to learn about Jesus. I like to read. But when it comes down to it, I got other things going on. Indifference. Indifference. We will be put to the test. We have been put to the test. This whole COVID thing has put us to the test. We are asked during this time, does our heart burn for the Eucharist? Jesus, here, present, now. Yes, we have to be careful. Yes, we have to be cautious. But gosh, if I were out there and I hadn't received Eucharist since March, for me, I would be spiritually dead. Spiritually dead. How do people do it? I understand they're concerned about their health, and we've made all kinds of ways to connect with Jesus during this time, especially Eucharistically. The beginning of the pandemic, when churches were not offering public masses, at least here in the diocese, and Father Shea just came back from a state, and he was just absolutely dumbfounded. The beaches were open. The churches were closed and locked. The beaches were open. The churches were closed and locked. Now, those of you that know me, the mask issue is, any of you familiar with Star Trek, the original? The Kobayashi Maru? The Kobayashi Maru is the no-win scenario. If I mandate masks, you lose. If I say you're on an honor system, you lose. No way can you win. The Kobayashi Maru is a no-win scenario. And that's the way it is as a pastor in these present times. People write me and say, there were people around me not wearing masks. I don't even get into it. It's like, were they 6 feet away? I don't even get into that. If they were 6 feet away, you can't win. Father Shea said on the beach, they're separated from one another in open air. People were wearing masks. But the churches are closed. At the beginning of the pandemic, when public masses were closed, when we opened up for communion distribution, those that were like these guys came in to receive. Some of them were crying so hard that they had to hold on to those columns to keep from falling over. See, that's not indifference. Someone sent me an instant message on Facebook. Her parish hadn't yet opened for that. She was up in the northern part of the valley, somebody that I knew from a previous assignment, good person. She said, well, St. Timothy's is such a far drive, and I'm not familiar with the East Valley. And I sent her a message back saying, your comment, I'm sorry, is not appropriate. And if you want to know why, I'll tell you. Because if I were in your shoes and I found out that Texas was offering Holy Communion and they weren't here, and I was a layperson, I would drive all night and all day to receive the most holy sacrament of the altar. We're going to find out after this COVID thing comes to a halt about indifference and true faith. Friends, as we begin the new year, let us examine our consciences and be aware if there are any agendas pushing us away from the miracle, the epiphany. Let's examine our conscience and look and see if there is any form of indifference that's keeping us from coming like these guys to the infant Jesus and prostrating ourselves before him. Let us never be indifferent to Jesus Christ.